right, Janelle here, 2024 Chamber Business Expo. I'm here with Scott with Masterpiece Cuisine, and I really want to talk to you and see who you are and what business you have and what really was the motivation to even create your business.
Well, I'm Scott Mahan with Masterpiece Cuisine. This is my catering company behind us, and I co-founded it in 2007, actually with Timothy Welc, Chef Timothy Welc. He's not here today, but that's the other half of Masterpiece, and it was really his vision, actually, if I'm being completely honest. He had worked in the restaurant industry for a long time. He had that itch. He was finally at that point in his life where I think every entrepreneur kind of gets to when they decide to make the jump. I just happened to be in his life at that time, and I had a background that really complemented his skill set. Mine was more sales, business administrative. You kind of need that as well. You know, great food is nice, but you got to have both. So that's where I came in.
Yeah. Well, and that's business ownership, right? It's the vision, it's the craft or whatever it is that we're passionate about, and then there's the business side of it, right? So as a business side of it, what are some things that you ran into that you didn't expect, and then how'd you overcome that?
Oh my goodness, how much time do you have there? I would say that first and foremost that there's two aspects of every business. You have the production, which is behind us. That's not really my area to begin with. So I think the surprise that probably most entrepreneurs would run into is that being a business owner is a full-time job in itself, and there's a lot of maybe not so fun things that come with that, but you know, whether it's taxes, hiring, HR, like all those things. If you're somebody that loves to cook or you love to paint and you want to have a painting business, or if you want to have a food business, you're going to have to figure those things out as well. So even myself being more in that area, I think a lot of those things were surprising as well. It's just how much of it in the beginning, it can be overwhelming, but if you stick with it, after a while, it's just like anything else, and then you can start to focus on the things that really matter, which is the production of the food and serving the great guests, which is what we do now.
Do you feel that, you know, putting systems in place helped your business, and did you have to outsource any of those things in order to create a more systematic operation?
Yes and yes. Systems are absolutely important, because if you don't provide consistency for your team, then they're not going to feel any need to be consistent. So you've got to have systems, and then you've got to have ways to monitor those systems. Anybody can put together a checklist, but unless you follow up to make sure that they're actually using it, it's really just a piece of paper. So it's the follow-up and creating clever ways to do that without your team feeling like you're watching their every move, right? So because everybody wants that freedom to operate, but everyone has to be held accountable. So you got to be a little bit tactful with that. And then in terms of outsourcing, absolutely. You know, for us, we've kind of always outsourced like our accounting. You know, that's one thing we don't really do in-house. Obviously, it's a big part of our business, and we have to stay in tune to it, but we've outsourced that, so that's just one example, but there's plenty of things that outsourcing is huge, and collaborating with other small businesses is a win-win.
Have you had to put in a CRM into place so that you can stay in touch, maybe giving, you know, updates on what's going on with the business to the existing, you know, customer, right? How are you staying in touch, or do you stay in touch, and how do you track all of that?
Yeah, so my business partner, Tim, pretty much runs like our digital marketing area. He's responsible for how everything looks, so it kind of made sense for him to be in charge of that. So he really runs our social media and takes care of our website, all of our marketing and follow-up efforts, and then I'm more responsible for targeting and finding the new opportunities for us. So we kind of work hand in hand that way. But the follow-up, every event, our team knows, our sales team knows, like, there's not one event that's going to go by where we're not going to talk to that client and say, how did it go? we want all that feedback. We want the smoke, as you say, because it's just what has made us into what we are today. Even the bad moments, I mean, you don't want to hear negative feedback, but you have to accept it and use it to, do something with it. You can't just say, okay, yeah, I mean, that item was dry, or, you've got to huddle up with your team. You've got to make adjustments when necessary. You don't want to overreact to every complaint, because everyone's got a different, taste, right? And sometimes they can be a little bit silly, but you've got to pay attention to what your clients are saying. So that has always been, for 17 years, that has been just a huge part of what we do.
So you've got the follow-up. Obviously, do you have systems in how you follow up with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, client feedback for a company like us is pretty straightforward, okay? Because our sales team works with our clients for sometimes months if we're doing a wedding or something like that. So the rapport is strong, and it's a little bit more of an advantage than, say, a restaurant. Someone might come in to a restaurant for one night, have a bad meal, and then just leave, and you never hear about it. They never come back. That doesn't happen with us. If we're catering a wedding, they're going to tell us if it didn't go well. It's very easy to get that information out of them. So, I mean, it's even simpler than calling it a system. It's literally just communication and that follow-up. Also, one other big thing that we do, which is pretty common sense, but all of our team, they have to take pictures of the setup. So if I wasn't here today, I'd be getting these pictures emailed. So we always see what it looks like. You got to see what it looks like. And so those two things really, that's like 90% of it for us.
Yeah. Well, and that's just the world we're living in right now, right? It's visual, it's video, it's photos. People want to see it. That's how you're kind of speaking to them through that food, right? And you're like, yeah, that's what I want for my wedding, or that's what I want for my event. So I would imagine in your industry, it's extremely important to have the visual of what you're presenting, right? So even on the back end, let's just even talk about growth for a company. How do you kind of plan that out? If you're expanding, is creating, room for more employees, what's the platform that you use, or how do you kind of navigate through that?
Again, that's like a how much time do you have type of question. Yeah. But I will say first and foremost, make sure that you've got a high pain tolerance, because I don't care how prepared you are, when you decide to scale like we did 3 years ago, outside of one state into another and into different markets. We're in healthcare now as well, so completely different market. It is a painful process, actually. Just like starting a business, right? It's kind of like all over again, okay? Because for us, if your infrastructure is not perfectly set up, once you're in the middle of it, it is too late. And so when you do run into those issues where you're like, oh, we need another person here, it's not that guy. I think he just expanded. He's excited, but no, I mean, for us, you got to have the people in place, not just good people. Yes, you got to hire good people, but you got to have the right people in place. They need experience doing their jobs. So when you first start expanding, they're not going to have that because they're probably in a new role or it's a new thing. So again, you look back on it 3, 4, 5 years later and you're like, oh, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? The biggest thing about it is you just have to keep coming back every day. And the minute you realize something is not right, you've got to go to work on fixing it. And but the more prepared you are, the better. You've got to have the team. You've got to have the people. Things like competitive salary, benefits, perks. You have to start to attract the right people. It's not the time to be cheap when you're expanding. It is the exact opposite. You have to invest, and it will come back to you. And that's what we started to do. And we saw the return on that immediately, and things became a lot easier.
Nice. Sounds like you've got a lot. You've learned a lot. You're learning how to scale, and you know what the expectation is and what in going into it. So what does the next, we'll say, 3 years look like for you guys?
Well, right now we operate out of Southern Nevada and in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we're also in Boulder City. That's where the nursing home is that we are providing the healthcare. So those are kind of like our few locations. And of course, we're doing the catering in Southern Nevada. So we want to grow the Southern Nevada catering. That's our bread and butter and where we've started. We want to get more healthcare accounts. We want to use that momentum to build them. It's a tough industry to crack. It's the giants. You're up against the giants. In fact, the first that account that we won, when we won that account, it was against $1 billion company. So I mean, it's like that's who you're going up against. That can be a little tricky. We got lucky that one time, but it's not easy. And so and then more states. We are targeting Arizona and Utah right now. The way that we are trying to branch into those states is through the government and state contracts, because if we can secure one of those, then we can hire a management team, and now we can start to do what we do here there. So we're even as we speak, we're bidding on a couple of those, and so fingers crossed, hopefully they go, and we're just going to organically grow that way, and we're not in a huge rush to grow, but if you're not growing, you're dying, right? I mean, so you can't take for granted what we have, right? We don't know that that's going to last forever, so we have to constantly be pushing forward, and but do it in a smart way, and that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, this is exciting. I'm so glad to have met you and to hear all about your story and your business, and super excited to see where you are next year when I come back and interview you again and see all the other states and what contracts you got, right? So you're on the right path. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for being part of our community. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you, and yeah, well, I promise we're going to get at least one more state next year. That's the promise I owe you, so hopefully we can get that going. It was nice meeting you too.
Thanks, Scott.